Bismillahirrahmanirrahim, one of the most successful scientific theories in history. It could easily be called the most groundbreaking achievements of the 20th century. So much so that 1/3 or even more of our economy today runs on it. I'm talking about quantum mechanics, or the study of the very small. So the atom, the electron, the proton, the quark, the basic building blocks of the universe. This theory is such that it does not even have a competitor when it comes to being verified both experimentally with observation. The mathematics works. I'm going to use it. I'm going to use quantum mechanics today to prove the existence of God. Okay, despite the fact that quantum physics is so successful, it really has some very controversial, very counterintuitive things to say about the nature of the universe. For the present discussion, I'm just going to take one, and that is that quantum physics actually hints that the fundamental nature of reality of the universe is not even physical. Take that. Okay. Not even that. It brings something so non-physical, non-material, lifelike, like consciousness, into the realm of physics. So let's get that straight. If we want to speak about the natural world, we want to study the natural world, we go into biology, we go into, life sciences, geology, and all of that. But if we want to go a bit deeper and study the chemical composition of stuff, then it's chemistry. If we want to go further deep and study the universe at its core, fundamental, elementary level, we go into quantum physics. So when we are saying that we have encountered consciousness, it's not from neuroscience or biology or life sciences. It's from the bedrock of science, from the foundation on which everything is built.
And here we are, the granddaddy of all quantum weirdness, the infamous double-slit experiment. To understand this experiment, we first need to see how particles, or little balls of matter, act. If we randomly shoot a small object, say a marble, at the screen, we see a pattern on the back wall where they went through the slit and hit. Now, if we add a second slit, we would expect to see a second band duplicated to the right. Now, let's look at waves. The waves hit the slit and radiate out, striking the back wall with the most intensity directly in line with the slit. The line of brightness on the back screen shows that intensity. This is similar to the line the marbles make. But when we add the second slit, something different happens. If the top of one wave meets the bottom of another wave, they cancel each other out. So now there is an interference pattern on the back wall. Places where the two tops meet are the highest intensity, the bright lines, and where they cancel, there is nothing. So, when we throw things, that is, matter, through two slits, we get this, two bands of hits. And with waves, we get an interference pattern of many bands. Good so far. Now, let's go quantum. An electron is a tiny, tiny bit of matter, like a tiny marble. Let's fire a stream through one slit. It behaves just like the marble, a single band. So, if we shoot these tiny bits through two slits, we should get, like the marbles, two bands. What? An interference pattern. We fired electrons, tiny bits of matter through. But we get a pattern like waves, not like little marbles. How? How could pieces of matter create an interference pattern like a wave? It doesn't make sense. But physicists are clever. They thought maybe those little balls are bouncing off each other and creating that pattern. So they decide to shoot electrons through one at a time. There is no way they could interfere with each other. But after an hour of this, the same interference pattern is seen to emerge. The conclusion is inescapable. The single electron leaves as a particle, becomes a wave of potentials, goes through both slits, and interferes with itself to hit the wall like a particle. But mathematically, it's even stranger. It goes through both slits, and it goes through neither. And it goes through just one, and it goes through just the other. All of these possibilities are in superposition with each other. But physicists were completely baffled by this. So they decided to peek and see which slit it actually goes through. They put a measuring device by one slit to see which one it went through and let it fly. But the quantum world is far more mysterious than they could have imagined. When they observed, the electron went back to behaving like a little marble. It produced a pattern of two bands, not an interference pattern of many. The very act of measuring or observing which slit it went through meant it only went through one, not both. The electron decided to act differently, as though it was aware it was being watched. And it was here that physicists stepped forever into the strange, never world of quantum events. What is matter? Marbles or waves? And waves of what? And what does an observer have to do with any of this? The observer collapsed the wave function simply by observing.
Okay, just to summarize, the double slit experiment, all it tells us is that reality, the universe at its core fundamental level, at the quantum level, is not just something, solid, physical, no, and deterministic, no. It exists as a wave of probabilities, as a wave of possibilities. Two is somehow our conscious observation, our consciousness affects it. That's even weirder. What has our consciousness got to do with the world that makes up everything, the basic building blocks of nature? But it was still so counterintuitive that Einstein didn't really like it, and he would say that I do not like quantum mechanics because God does not play dice. In the sense, what he meant was that the reality at its fundamental nature cannot be probabilistic, because dice is probabilistic, to which Niels Bohr, the founding father of quantum mechanics, would remark that Einstein should stop telling God what to do.
The most successful physical theory of all time is called quantum mechanics, the theory of the atom, because it's based on the idea of probabilities, that you don't really know where an electron is, and electrons can exist in some sense in multiple states at the same time.
Erwin Schrödinger, one of the founders of quantum mechanics, designed a thought experiment to drive home the strange rules of his theory. Let's say we put a cat and a vial of poison in a box. We add an atom of radioactive uranium and a Geiger counter. If the uranium decays, it sets off the Geiger counter, which then releases the poison and silently kills the cat. Before we open the box and look, we can't actually know whether the uranium has decayed or not, since radioactive decay is a probabilistic quantum event.
Here's the question. Is the cat dead or alive? Well, according to quantum mechanics, the cat is neither dead nor alive, but the sum of the two states. Well, at that point, you say, well, that's nonsense. That's preposterous. How can you be both dead and alive simultaneously?
Schrodinger's cat was supposed to show that nothing in this universe is certain until someone makes a measurement. But another pioneer of quantum mechanics, Eugene Wigner, believed it could teach us something else about the working of the universe. That consciousness controls everything.
Wigner said, let's take it one step farther. If I, a human being, looks at the cat, I am conscious. Therefore, consciousness determines existence. At that point, Einstein went ballistic and said, what? You're saying that the fact that you are a conscious being determines the fact that the cat is alive? Answer is yes. And Wigner made one more step, and that is, how do I know I'm alive? You see, the cat and me, we're part of the same universe. If I don't know the cat is alive or dead, I could also be dead at the same time and not even know it. So who determines that I'm alive? Well, Wigner's friend looks at me, I look at the cat, and we exist. But then who looks at Wigner's friend? And there's an infinite chain of people looking at people, until finally you hit cosmic consciousness. Some consciousness that's ethereal, that envelops the universe, which looks at us and says, aha, the cat is alive.
Wigner believed that consciousness is an inextricable part of reality, that nothing really happens in the physical world unless a conscious mind observes it.
The observer effect of quantum mechanics happens when observation or measurement changes the nature of a quantum particle. From a probability wave, which is an unreal thing, to a real thing. This is by far one of the biggest controversy and achievement of the modern world. Controversy for atheism that has pervaded our scientific circles, and achievement for theistic traditions, especially Islam. Why do I say Islam? Because the observer effect of quantum physics was already predicted by the Quran 1.5 millennium ago. Immediately after the weird behavior of quantum particles was discovered, the next question that was asked by the founders of quantum theory was, life is also made up of atoms, so does life also behave in this controversial manner? Listen to these words carefully. سنريهم آياتنا في الآفاق وفي أنفسهم حتى يتبين لهم أنه الحق أولم يكف بربك أنه على كل شيء شهيد. In future, we will show them our signs in the universe and within their own selves, their consciousness or their physiology, until it will become clear to them that He is the truth, the real, Annahul Haq. Is it not enough for them to know about your Lord, that it is He who is observant over everything? Ala kulli shay'in shaheed. What is interesting about this verse is that firstly it anticipates future discoveries in astronomy and cosmology, fil afaq, and these discoveries will also extend to human consciousness and physiology, wa fi anfusihim, something which is common to both microscopic and macroscopic worlds. Nothing other than quantum mechanics fits this description, especially because the central theme of quantum mechanics is that the world around us, including us, is not physically, objectively real. The verse then says, the consequence of these new developments in cosmology and physiology would be to necessarily conclude, the existence of an all-observing intelligent being, Annahu ala kulli shay'in shaheed, who represents the only objective reality. Since everything else is not objectively, physically real, the only objective reality would be this all-observing intelligent being, Annahul Haq, apart from whom nothing else can be called real. The most important point to understand by any serious student of science is that the observer effect is not just an anomaly or a counterintuitive mishap that just happened in one experiment. The observer effect is a meta-phenomenon. It presides over all processes, equally valid to all pure state quantum events. It is a fundamental quality of the quantum world that makes up everything in the universe, that it is sensitive to conscious observation. This is not just an accident, rather a basic mechanism of how the universe functions at its fundamental level. So whenever we hear the phrase a pure quantum event, we must know with surety that conscious observation will affect it. Understand is that the quantum world is not only affected by our observation, the quantum world does not have any physical existence. It does not exist in our three-dimensional universe. It is our conscious observation that makes it real. Something that occupies space has properties. Until then, it is just a wave of probabilities, not a wave of energy or matter, a mathematical wave or a collection of all the possibilities that the particle has. And when we observe it, it takes up one or the other of its possibilities. So if the universe at its core has no physical reality and it is our conscious observation that makes it real, then what is the necessary conclusion that we are left with? It is that the conscious observation or consciousness is the most fundamental thing to the universe. It's not matter, it's not space or time. All are emergent. The most fundamental thing to the universe is consciousness. When we have completely absorbed these 2 points, that the quantum world is an unsettled collection of possibilities, and it is our conscious observation that gives it reality, then we very well know that there are quantum events going on in the universe at each and every fraction of a second. We occupy a very insignificant portion of the vast expanding universe. We have to understand that when we look around the world, we see a real three-dimensional physical universe. We don't see any fuzzy wave of probability. From the deep recesses of the planet, ocean beds, uninhabited forests, islands, think about the solar system, the Milky Way, the cores of stars where all the elements that we are made up of are manufactured. That's carbon, oxygen, calcium, iron. Also, violent explosions of stars or supernovae that produce all the heavy elements that we see around us. Okay, what about the horizons of black holes, in the cells of plants, in the eyes of birds, in the fertilization of an embryo, in the germination of seeds, in the growth of a human being, inside the brains of living beings, in the evolutionary process at the beginning of everything, at the beginning of the universe itself. Quantum mechanics lies at the root of all of these phenomena. I ask you, what is this consciousness that is present everywhere in the universe, from the beginning of time till the end of the universe, and everywhere in between, observing everything in such a subtle manner at the fundamental level of existence? Again, I say the observer effect is a meta-phenomenon. It is not just an anomaly that can be easily ignored or left for philosophers to discuss or undermine by suggesting other highly deterministic and philosophical interpretations. The observer effect is here to stay, and the most scientific thing to do is to deal with it. It is as applicable in the double-slit experiment as it is in nuclear reaction in stars, in the retina of birds, in the photosynthesis of plants, in the formation of a human being in the uterus, in cell division, in the evolutionary process. At the beginning of the universe. The beginning of the universe is actually a quantum event, a pure state quantum event. The universe as a whole has a universal wave function, that is, a collection of all possibilities it could potentially realize. But when we look around, we don't see the wave function. We see a real three-dimensional universe. Why? Because there is someone observing the entire universe from the beginning to the end. This is the absolute consciousness. Here is science itself proving the existence of a conscious, intelligent being who is ever present and ever observant of each and everything that is happening in the entire universe.